It's not September 29th, you notice, I think I messed up the slide here. A couple of reminders, the quiz at the end of the period today, and you should have your homework portfolio here with you to show me. If it's not, just bring it to next class and get it checked off. Also, a reminder, your second paper about the Babylonian trigonometry controversy. Any revisions we're going to do to that should get to me by Friday. Yeah.
When we handle the revisions, do you want the original paper that you graded with that?
Ooh, very good question, and very good point too. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to compare them. So please, if you've lost your original, don't sweat it. That'd be nice. Okay. So this is a famous picture. We're going to look at Archimedes today. Can you tell which one is him?
The one getting struck down by a Roman soldier?
No, one is in the back. One of the few people in the back.
One of the guys running away in the distance. He's about to be killed by this Roman soldier, which this is terrible art in several ways. The person who did this did not know about military history. The guy's carrying a cutlass. That's not the sort of sword that a Roman soldier would have had, a symmetrical blade. And he's also, if he's about to make a swing like this, with striking through from left to right, and he's just advanced with his left foot to do that. You don't do that. You advance with your right foot if you're Slash. Anyway, so about Archimedes. He was born while Euclid was an old guy. So these guys overlapped by about 20 years. He was born in 287 BCE. I heard the name Syracuse, so I was like, oh, my wife went to college there, but no. In Sicily, it's on the, okay, if you know your geography, Italy has that shape that looks like a boot. Sicily is this little rock at the end that the boot is getting ready to kick. I don't know from your perspective. It's the southeastern corner of Sicily. So he became quite famous in Syracuse. It seems he was related to the king, not like direct family, but he had a relation to the king there. And when the Romans started rising, one of the things they wanted to do was take Syracuse. So they sieged the place with a naval armada. And Archimedes was instrumental in keeping that siege at bay and stopping the Romans from taking the city until that last scene. So yeah, the common parable here is Archimedes was ignoring the final defeat, right? The Romans were actually starting to pour into the city. And he was off on the beach with a stick, working out some geometry in the sand. And the Roman soldier comes up and says, we're taking you in. And he said, just don't disturb my fingers, I'm working. So that's when he gets the axe, or the sword. There have been other tales of that story. There's another version of it is Archimedes had a bunch of astronomical equipment that was made of brass, and the Roman soldiers thought he had gold. So he was carrying all this heavy equipment made of gold, and they wanted to kill him with brass. But the sort of an interesting point, the Roman general was named Marcellus, and he was in charge of a big invasion force, but he had been stymied by the war machines and things that Archimedes had designed. So he wanted him. In some ways, the gold had shifted from taking Syracuse to getting Archimedes. The orders had gone out to get this guy alive. And when somebody killed him, he was probably pissed. So some of the things Archimedes did, I wrote a lever right there, but that's not quite true. Of course, people have been using levers since we were cave people. What he did is understand the physics of it, that the force applied to an object versus the force applied by your hand on the end of the lever are related by the ratios of the distances from the lever law, they call it. Compound pulleys. I have them right here today. Something. I think I may have mentioned to one or two of you at one point I made probably a huge mistake and took the motor out of my car and put in an electric motor. That car's currently not running, so you can see the sort of thing. But I can show you a compound pulley because of what I was doing with that. This is how I lifted up a 300-pound electric motor and slid it gracefully into the car. It was a giant sawhorse. And this tangle of rope here is a compound pulley. You can probably see at the top there are 4 lines going through wheels at the top there, and there's also 4 at the bottom. So, and there's my son being all cute. was hoping I could pinch in, zoom in here, but I don't think I can. So that particular pulley system has 8 strands of rope going between the sets of pulleys, the 4 in the bottom and the 4 at the top. So whatever tension is in the line, I apply 10 pounds of force, well then there's 10 pounds of force for each one of those strands. So the total is 80 pounds. If you're pulling with 10 pounds of force, you get 80 pounds of lift, which makes it really easy to pick up something heavy. Now Archimedes apparently proved this point to the king after he told him that this could be done. He said, yeah, I'll show you. And he set up a really big compound pulley system and pulled a ship across ground by himself.
Would it be 40 pounds? Or do you get double per strand?
Let's see, it's tension, so you're right, 40 pounds. It's 10 pounds up and 10 pounds down. No, still. You got to do a thing of a free body diagram. Imagine the weight separated from the rest of the stuff. It's just got 8 things on it that are pulling upward, and they each have 10 pounds. Somewhere in here, you can see in these thumbnails. One of my neighbors was helping me, and this is a big guy. He's probably as tall as Val is, and kind of perky. He's probably about 280 pounds. Somewhere along in here is a picture of Stephen there dangling from the compound pulley, and me holding him up with just my teeth. I mean, you know, I thought that was impressive. Anyway, we'll stop with that. We'll go back to the slides. The screw of Archimedes. Now, this was important in the ancient world because up until this point in time, nobody had any way of carrying water uphill other than put it in buckets and carry it. Right? So he came up with a mechanical device that would do the job. And excuse the format of this. I got a YouTube video here, but it's Spanish. But there's subtitles, so we should be able to follow it pretty well. It's a cool little project somebody did. And it really nicely illustrates the screw of Archimedes.
En el tornillo de Arquímedes, para el cual utilizamos un solo tubo de 15 centímetros de diámetro por 2 metros de largo, un poliflex de 4 metros de largo por 1,5 pulgadas de diámetro y un contenedor en un nivel bajo,
Anybody speak Spanish?
otro contenedor en un nivel alto y un sistema para nuestro proyecto. La idea es que el agua de un nivel bajo suba por la manguera hasta un nivel más alto.
I gotta ask you a question. When she starts spinning this, the first bit of water just went into the tube. Notice how nothing's coming out, but I was off up there. Did you see how that's working as the spiral tube is rotated? It picks up some water at the bottom, and it always hangs in the low part.
Este es el tornillo de Arquímedes funcionando como piso de motor. Gracias.
So I finally found online a source for a video that shows the original form, the kind of thing that they described in Proclus when they discussed Archimedes' screw. And this video is a little long, but it's kind of a neat historical context too. So I'll show you this.
Mozia is a small island off the western coast of Sicily, where since the
We had a
time...
perfect chance to see Sicily. Not that. There we go. So there's the boot with the Sicily is this almost triangular island off the tip of it. Yeah, we actually saw the Pythagoreans within here. Archimedes was down here. And the guy's about to describe a salt manufacturing facility in the town. The other corner.
Mozia is a small island off the western coast of Sicily, where since the times of the Phoenicians, salt has been produced in the salt pits you can see in the background.
But the Phoenicians would be the civilization prior to the Greeks in that industry.
After the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians settled on the island, making it their first and most important colony in Sicily. To reach the salt pits, they had to come on this road that is now covered by 2 feet of lagoon water.
I thought it would be fun to see the salt piles that they're making. They're basically evaporating seawater.
When in
Actually, salt
1862, Garrett
Let me push forward to where we actually see the screw working.
Isn't that how salt was actually made?
Well, that's how salt was made in ancient. You ever get sea salt for, a lot of people like sea salt for different flavor, maybe it's more healthy or something. That's how sea salt is made. No, I think the Morton Company has other processes where they give pure sodium chloride. Oh, there it is.
Although we are in the 21st century, they still use Archimedes' screw in its original form.
The similarity with the one replica of Archimedes' screw, according to the Drury's description, is stunning. The screw is completely manufactured in wood and sealed with bitumen.
I gotta mention, bitumen in British usage is what we would call coal tar. It's tar. And you don't see the spiral. Remember the sonotube with the spiral pipe wrapped around it? Well, that's inside of this thing, right? The interior of it has a wooden screw, literally, and then it's surrounded by this waterproof thing. Most of the time, if you look up the screw of Archimedes on YouTube, I did a lot of that recently, and most of the people will have a fixed tube with a screw in the middle, and there's got to be a seal between the screw part and the tube in order to get water to come up. Now, made out of wood, that seal wouldn't have worked very well. So Archimedes' real stroke of genius here was realizing that you needed those, you can make those things join together rather than sliding around. Oh, I muted it. All right, yeah.
I think you pushed that past that.
Where did I push?
And the layer.
Oh, we just unmuted it. They got a little
Simple
gas
explosion
motor.
engines linked to a carbon-jointed shaft coupling have replaced the hundreds of windmills which were used to power the water screws until the end of the 19th century.
That's enough of that, but why would they need the Archimedes screw for this purpose? As the seawater was evaporating, the water's coming out, right? You're getting more and more saline water. And eventually it's like the Dead Sea, and the salt just crystallizes right out of it on the shores. So they had big areas where they're evaporating the stuff, and it would slowly trickle from the high levels to the low levels. And these things are what move the still salty water from the lowest levels back up to where it could continue to evaporate out. Okay, I think we'll go back to the slides here. Buoyancy is a fraud detector. There's a video there, but I think I'm going to ask you to put that on your own. It's a cartoon from one of these TED Ed presentations. It is, there's some debate about whether this is the real story, but this is kind of the common one if you hear about Archimedes' so-called Eureka moment. You've heard of the Eureka moment? So he figured out something while he was in the public baths in Syracuse, and he got so excited, he started screaming Eureka and running up and down the streets naked. Yeah, so the joke is Eureka is just great for, do you have a towel? No. So what he supposedly figured out was that he could determine the volume of an entirely irregular object by using the fact that it changes its weight, whether it's in air or in water. If it's in water, it's buoyed, it's got some buoyancy, an upward force on it that is proportional to how much water it displaces. And that's still called Archimedes' law. People who make boats do that, right? If you ever think about like really big boats and cruise ships and stuff made out of steel, they should not float, should they? A lot of people are worried about that. But the point is that steel hull goes down into the water a good distance, and it displaces an awful lot of water. It's the weight of the water that counts, not the weight of the hull. So the fact that it's mostly hollow means that on average it's they go float after all. There is this whole tale about during the siege of Syracuse, Archimedes built these engines of war, and to him, supposedly, it was just an exercise in geometry. He wasn't interested in warfare so much as he was figuring out the consequences of geometrical facts. I just do not believe this. I mean, one of the stories is, I think they call it the Claw of Archimedes, which would supposedly was like a crane or something. It would come down and pick a boat up by its bow, lift it into the air, and then drop its stern first back into the water so it would sink. the reason I don't believe it is think about the power that would be required to any reasonable amount of time lift a boat out of the water. Again, if you had the compound pulley, you could sit there and work for 3 days and slowly get it out. Right? But to just reach in and grab it while the guys are still on board and not coming out to fight you, I don't think so.
Was that one actually real?
No one knows, really. I mean, there's no remnants of anything of the sort that people could find. Death rays. He's credited with a death ray, seriously. And am I surprised you by saying I think I believe this one? I'd like us to try this sometime. Let me show you the historian in the 1940s in Italy, that guy.
Ο Σακάς πίστευε
Okay,
ότι ο
this is
Αρχιμίδης
so
δεν
fast.
χρησιμοποιούσε φακούς, αλλά
I thought
είχε
that
καταλήξει
they
ότι
used lenses to
χρησιμοποιούσε
concentrate the
κάτω
sun.
τα ασπίδες
Yeah.
καλογιαλισμένες, οι οποίες με την κατάλληλη χρήση συγκέντρωναν τις ηλιακές ακτίνες σε ένα συγκεκριμένο σημείο, το οποίο έπαιρνε φωτιά.
Sakas, a tireless experimenter, spent much of his career reconstructing ancient Greek technological weapons and mechanical
I had them
devices.
all aim them at a certain
He decided to put the Archimedes mirror theory to the test. Sakas successfully created a fire using a barrage of polished metal shields. But he decided to take the test a step further with
I'm gonna stop for a second. Is anybody a Mythbusters fan? Mythbusters apparently has tried this twice. Unable to get a fire.
But I mean, it's kind of like the running joke where you see like a kid with a magnifying glass with a hand setting it on fire.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you see that a lot too.
At the same time, that was a stationary lock when like ships would be moving, which would be what they're using.
Right. So they had to have a way of aiming it, and I think that's where Archimedes' geometry would have come in handy. They wouldn't have just been standing around with these shields, right? All in a circle around the ship. No way. They would have been stationed in a lot of places around the peninsula, and they would have needed to be able to aim their beam of light, their individual beam of light at the ship. Now that's really just a matter of bisecting an angle. You need the mirror to be perpendicular to the bisector of the angle between the sun and the ship. And that's a geometry problem. In fact, you can set up a mechanism for that. So this is what I think I'd like us to try sometime. I'll bring in the mechanism, and I've got a lot of shiny Mylar, and we can try to set something on fire. Not
Sure.
fire.
Outside.
Outside, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be a math club thing. We need more hands. The math club proving that Archimedes did a death ray. That would be pretty awesome. A little further up in this video.
Τελικά έφτασε να κάνει το μεγάλο πείραμα το Νοέμβριο του 1973, οπότε χρησιμοποιώνται.
parallel, scientists in Colorado in America have created a vast experimental solar-powered furnace, which works on exactly the same principle as the Archimedes death ray. It focuses hundreds of mirrors onto a central point, which then heats to immense temperatures of thousands of degrees Celsius. Its future uses include manufacturing for high-tech industries.
I'm not so sure about that. I think they just wanted to prove that they could produce a lot of heat. Manufacturing for high tech. There is a video about the claw, but I'm not. Oops, I didn't want to.
Does it take to sink a modern warship?
So, yeah, death rays. Probably the biggest claim for Archimedes' capabilities that's just extraordinary is that he may have known something about calculus. Not differential calculus, integral calculus, so something approximating our ideas of Riemann sums. And there's actually mounting evidence for this. He wrote a book called The Method, which showed how to do certain things, like figuring out the perimeter of a circle. Well, that's really an integral process, right? You get a whole bunch of lengths from polygons, and you think about limits as the number of edges of a polygon goes up, and you produce something for the length of the circle. The evidence for this is actually lost, or was lost, until pretty recently. So the Method was a book that he would have written when he lived in 300 BC. It probably was copied multiple times, so the person who eventually ruined it was dealing with the last copy. And this person was a 12th century monk who wanted to create a prayer book. So what he did was rip up that book, this priceless piece by Archimedes, and cut it into pieces and erased everything that he could erase from it, and then wrote his prayer book on top of it and bound it himself.
Was it a good prayer book?
I have no idea what the prayer, I mean, the prayer book itself is now an older thing, right? So you probably don't want to damage the prayer book. It's from 1200. So the thing was it was discovered. I'll show you the video here. There's a museum in Baltimore, Maryland, my hometown. It's called the Walters Art Gallery, and they are famous as conservators, which means that they take ancient things that have, been through the ringer a little bit and repair them, bring them back to as close as you can to new condition without. So I actually used to have a friend who was a tapestry conservator at the Walters. And, she would spend, a work day getting 1 square inch of a giant tapestry clean. That was, it was like, pretty boring work. I want this line here is a hyperlink. So it's to a TED Talk. I would ask you to look in the slides section on Blackboard and follow that yourself, because it's a little bit long, but it's quite amusing. The guy tells a story about how they had to use like nuclear physics to get the information off of the codex. Part of the codex was actually, subsequent to it being written as a prayer book, somebody else came along and put a gold leaf on it and then made decorations. I don't know what they were up to, but the ink that Archimedes, the copier of Archimedes wrote in was based on iron. So they used a nuclear physics technique, bombarding the book with X-rays from a synchrotron, and iron emits a particular frequency of X-rays when it's under bombardment. Right? So they were able to image this thing and read the iron ink, even though it had been erased and then covered over with other stuff, including a layer of gold foil. So it's pretty amazing. And probably the coolest thing about it is this lost codex is now all online. You can go there, you can go online and see. And if you can read a Dorian dialect of ancient Greek, you're set. But people are working on translations. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was supposed to say this. So the two things that are in this palimpsest are the Stomachion and the method. The method is the thing that's kind of quasi-calculus, and the Stomachion is actually a foundational puzzle in an area that I work in. It's an area called combinatorics, which is about how many ways you can do things, roughly speaking, how many different combinations you can. Well, okay, a lot of things that involve counting get done in combinatorics. So the Stomachion problem is a picture of a puzzle, and the question is, how many ways can you reassemble those puzzle pieces and have them still fit in the square frame? And it turns out it's on the order of several thousand. It was his first attempt at a combinatorial puzzle. Last thing, and then we'll probably stop at 5. This is a quote I took out of the MacTutor History of the Math Archive. One of the things that he thought of as his most significant contribution to math. So I think I've shown you a lot of the things that were more engineering, more physics things. The law of buoyancy, that's definitely a mathy thing. But one thing in particular he came up with, which I really like, is the ratio of the volumes. If you have a perfect sphere, and you have a cylinder that just encloses it. Try to just enclose a cylinder with a sphere. I mean a sphere with a cylinder. Well, maybe it's hollow at the top so we can see it right now. So the sphere has radius r. Can you tell me how tall the cylinder is? 2r. That's the diameter of the sphere. And the cylinder's radius is also r, like the cylinder, like the sphere. So let's talk about the surface areas of these. So think about the surface area for the cylinder. The basic trick is to imagine it cutting it up into a big rectangle and a couple of end caps that you could use for the ends. And these are easy, they're pi r squared, right? But what about the part that ends up being bent around to form the outside wall of the cylinder? It's 2 pi r the long way, and it's 2r the vertical way, so a total of 4 pi r squared. Okay, I'm seeing 6 pi r squared total, right? So the area of the cylinder, 6 pi r squared. And you probably all know the area formula for the surface area of a sphere.
4/3.
Okay, you know the volume formula. You want to talk to me?
4/3 pi r
4/3 pi r
cubed.
cubed. It turns out the area is basically the derivative of volume. Derivative with respect to changing r. That's like one of those ways that Leibniz would think about it, the differential approximation. But yeah, if you take the derivative of the volume formula, you'll get the surface area formula. Good trick to know. Yeah, 4/3 pi r cubed turns into 3r squared now, right? These are all constants, so yeah, it's 4 pi r squared. So what's the ratio between them? 3:2. Now, Archimedes thought that was such a cool thing that it should be such a simple ratio between them, and that he could prove it, and that, I suspect the method had to do with that proof, that's what he wanted on his tomb. Right? So many years later, a little over 200 years later, Cicero wanted to see if he could find Archimedes' tomb. I'm imagining Cicero like some Indiana Jones kind of moment. You know, he's going through the jungle in Sicily, and he finally finds it. So he knew that this was supposed to be inscribed on it. There's an actual quote from Cicero here. I found it enclosed all around, covered with brambles and thickets. For I remember certain doggerel lines inscribed, as I had heard, on his tomb, which stated that a sphere along with a cylinder had been put on top of his grave. Accordingly, after taking a good look all around, I noticed a small column arising a little above the bushes on which there was a figure of a sphere and a cylinder. Above this next, slaves were sent in to deal with brambles. So not really Indiana Jones. Indy would have done it himself. So they were able to see the epigram, and it was traceable. He said about half of it was legible. This is lost now. Nobody has any idea where that was on Sicily. It's gone, but a little over 2,000 years ago, somebody was able to find it once. Okay, so let's have some reminders. On Wednesday, we're going to hit Diophantus and Hypatia. This is sort of the middle of the classical Greek period is where we're talking about Archimedes. These guys both fall towards the end. Diophantus is for number theory, and Hypatia, well, mostly was actually just for being a female mathematician. She did work on conic sections and